Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Effects Maniac again. This is Sayed Mahmoud Amiri, and welcome to another kind of a cool tutorial. As we all know, we're all going through this difficult times with this coronavirus and stuff. And I hope everyone, each and every one of you guys, are staying safe, staying home, and this is, I think, the time for us artists to kind of like, play around and, do things. I think that's what we want, right? So just stay home and do stuff and be creative. And it's been a long time since I've done a tutorial, and I'm sorry about that again. I always say it, but, just thought of doing a tutorial for you people. And this one is pretty simple, very, very simple, but we're just going to take a look at how to create this nice shader for the particles, and like some very cool techniques are there along the way, and how to get them to interact with some with this sort of plane. And one very specific thing is there which we're going to talk about. Okay, so let's take a look at the scene here. The scene is basically like this, where we have kind of like a terrain object. Let me turn off this wireframe. Okay, so we have this thing, and we're emitting some particles on top of it, and we can just like create some beautiful renders out of it. So let's take a look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new plane, new scene actually. Don't save it, and it's going to be very quick. So let's see here. I'm just going to, and by the way, I'm using my 2020. So shift right click, create a plane, hit R to scale it up, and move it up. And we basically want to give this a lot of segments because we want to create some detail. So I'm just going to select them both, and I'll set it to like 60 maybe. Yeah, we're going to increase it a lot, so later. So I'm going to go to Deform and add a texture deformer and create, and hit Control A for the attributes editor, and I'm going to go into the texture and click, and I'll add a fractal. So let's see here. Yeah, we just basically want something to be able to some sort of noisy pattern. So I'm just going to go into like material attributes, and or just click on the texture deformer, go inside and play around with some of these settings. You can play, and the frequency, the maximum level, the minimum level, and stuff. But this is not what we want. This is just for the basic thing. So what I'm going to do is add a mesh smooth, which we're going to make it smoother. And right now we don't need the history. So what I'm going to go into edit, delete by type history, and now I'm going to sculpt some details onto this. So I'm going to go into the sculpting tools of Maya, and we have some different tools. We're going to take like, let's see here, let's take this. And if I click on it, you can see that we're creating some random detail. And in order to increase the size of this brush, you can hold press B, and lift mouse click and drag. You can increase or decrease the size. So you can basically add some random details in here. And if you want to go, like, it's going up, right? So it's positive. So if you hold down Control, it's gonna go down. So it's basically gonna go in, for some areas which would look cool. So I'm just trying to create some random sort of details out here. So let's see here, and you can use some other brushes too, like even this one, or this. Let's see here. Yeah, it's gonna bring out some areas, which is. And if you want to control the intensity, you just select the brush, and here it comes. So double click on it, and you can see that the strength is pretty high. So what I'm going to do is make it like 3. So I'll just go and add some random things, and also add another smooth to make it more like to have more details, and then go into delete by type history again, and now you can add even more details with this tool. So let's see here. Yeah, so now it'll be nice. So yeah, it depends on you, like how many levels you want to go, but this is like a nice way to create some like nice terrain. You can hold Control for some of the areas and stuff. So yeah, this is like, yeah. This is basically our thing, but the problem is, again, we need to delete the history again. So what I'm going to do is delete the history. So now if you can just take the scale tool and make it less if it's a little too intense. You can add another smooth, but I'm just going to stick with this one. So the main thing is, now we need to emit some particles and have it stick exactly onto those minor and small details of the object. So what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to add another smooth, even though it's going to make it a bit like slow, but it's fine. Now we got a lot of details. So now I'm going to delete the history again because it's going to make it a bit, you know, faster to work with. So now I need to emit some particles, and I need each one of these particles to understand every small detail and every sort of fractal detail of this object. So what I'm going to do is I'll create a plane, another plane. So shift right click and move it up, and hit R to scale it up. So I basically want the particles to be emitted from this surface. So what I'm going to do is go into this menu and click on effects and go into NParticles, emit from object, click on that little box here, and I'm just going to go surface and make it like 500 for now and create. So now you can see that the particles are emitting, but they're not colliding with the object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this object, go into NCloth, create passive collider, and it's going to take a bit of time because the object is pretty detailed. So now you can see that the particles are actually colliding with that surface. But there are two things, okay? First things is that if I go into the outliner, select the NParticle and change the shape to spheres, first thing is they're not colliding with each other. So what we can do is go into the collisions and self collide, turn it on. So now the particles are going to collide with themselves, which they're going to make them a little bit more realistic. Yeah. But the other problem is, which I've actually didn't knew this for a very long while since I started using Maya, is that the particles are not exactly colliding with like the surface. Let me see here if I can show you guys. See, yeah, right here there's like a little bit of a distance here. It's not exactly on that surface, and that's because if you select this plane, it's got a thickness. If I say that there's a thickness, right? So it's basically avoiding the particles to collide with the surface. So we need to turn that to 0. So now it's going to be, if I resimulate, it's going to stick exactly to that surface. So there's not going to be any distance between each particle and that surface. So that's basically the thing. And now is the time to go and change the size of the particles and increase the number, and that's it. So I'm going to make it like 0.15. And if you want to add some variation, you can go into this graph and click some points, make it like up and down, you know, create some random graph, not so much of a difference, and click on randomized ID. So now you get like these different size particles, which is cool. And if you want to increase the number of them, you can just click on this plus icon, select the emitter, make it like what, 5,000. And I'm going to keyframe this. So I'll basically emit the particles and let them like go down. Let's see here how many we want. So I think this is like enough, and I'm going to right click on this set key, move to like 5 frames, and then set it to 0, and then right click set key again. So what it's going to do is, if I let this simulate, is that it's going to, you know, create the particles till like 50 frames, and then from frame 50 to frame 55 they're just gonna basically stop emitting particles, and they're gonna let them basically, you know, do their job. Which I think we have a lot of particles already, and yeah, there are like a lot of particles. So what we can do is just shift select these 2 keyframes and drag them like what, to 30 frames, because we want them to stop emitting a bit sooner. And the other thing you can play with is these settings, you know, the bounce, like how much are they gonna bounce when they're gonna, you know, hit the surface, or you can increase the friction and stickiness, which they're just gonna, like, they're not even gonna move. If you increase the stickiness so much, then when the particles touch that floor, they're not even gonna move, they're just gonna stick there. So let's see here, you see that? It just stick there like snow. So you can create snow and stuff like that, but for in this case I do want them to move, you know, so I'm just going to select this and just set them to 0, you know, friction and the stickiness. I want them to move around because there's going to be some interaction between the particles when they collide with each other, you know, and then once they do, I want them to move. So yeah, I think now it's we need a bit of like friction, so because they're like moving too much. So yeah, and a bit of stickiness. So I'm gonna do the final thing now. So I'm just going to let it sim, and then we're gonna do the the lighting, and add some lights. So it's done, and let's see here. If I go close, you can see that we got a lot of particles actually. And now if you want to change the color of them, you can just go into the NParticle and go into the color and add some color like nodes. Make it like green or whatever, you know. Just don't make them too saturated and too bright, so we'll make them a little darker. And click on this, and I'll go with maybe like orange, orangish, and maybe white. And we can change the color input to like randomized ID. And yeah, I think green to orange is a pretty thing, so it's like it just goes, you know, it's in the cycle, so it's not that much of a difference. So blue and orange would be something. And yeah, let's see here. So if I render this, I can just hit H on the plane. If I render this right now, we don't see anything because we have no lights. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Arnold lights, and I'm going to add a area light, move it up, hit R, scale it up, hit 7 to see the lighting in the viewport. I'm just going to rotate it to this side and move it up, and I'm going to basically do it like this. And I'm going to increase the intensity to like 10 and the exposure to 6 for now. Let's see here. But now this only like one-sided, which is not really cool. So if I open the Arnold render view, you can see that's pretty dark. We can't even see the colors. But this looks very abstract, which I like it. And then for the plane, you can just right click and add a favorite material, Lambert, and darken it so it's not that bright. And now I'm going to duplicate this and move it to this side so that they're both like fully lit up, and you know, like this. Now we'll see here if they're too bright. Now you can see that the thing is there, but the main problem is these balls or these particles are very shiny and very reflective, which we don't want that. We want them to have that soft sort of specular highlight, you know, not be so reflective. So what I'm going to do is just zoom in on an area so we can see it a little better. And I'm just going to go into the NParticle, go into Endpoints Blend, and decrease the reflectivity, increase the eccentricity, and the specular roll-off. So now if I go here, you can see that they're having this really nice sort of specular, not so shiny and reflective sort of material to them. And the other thing you can do is, I mean, this is basically the effect that we were going for, right? The other thing you can do is that you can increase the light samples to like 3 and 3 for the shadows to look better. And I think the colors are not, you know, they're not really nice. So what I'm going to do is go into the shading. I'm just going to make it like what? Let's see here. I'm just going to make constant blue. Let's see how it goes. And they're not too bad. And you can make the floor reflective. I mean, in one of the examples I did, and it was not that bad, but let's see here, this color, I'm just gonna double click on it, or just click, and let's see here, let's keep playing with it and see which color does look good on this. I think orange looks better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a nice HD render out of one frame. So let's see here. The problem is we got like a lot of particles. They're like so packed up so that we can't even see. Or you can create one like this, you know. You can create like different views. You can zoom in like this, from like a top view or something. I don't know, whatever you like. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go here, make a very close-up sort of render of these, and kind of like this. And in the original example, I've given the plane a Lambert, but in the texture I've added like a checker material. And if I hit 6, you can see it's pretty big. I'm going to go into the UVs, automatic, and again go into the thing. It's just going to take a few seconds because it's got a lot of detail. So okay, so we're back, and now you can see that it's looking pretty weird, but we need to increase the number of, if you go into material attributes, go into the checker, go into place 2D texture, we're going to make it like what, 40 by 40, so that we have some pattern over here, some checker pattern. I don't know, like recently I got like, I'm interested in this checker pattern to use in my things. I don't know why, but it just looks cool. And then you can just increase the color so it's not that much like obvious, you know, of a thing. So just some sort of a randomness. And I'm just going to click here, and in the original example I've changed, like, you know, maybe I'll add some more colors to these particles, because I think that way they're gonna look cool. So white, red, I'm gonna go with red, but not so much of a thing, and then green and blue. I think they'll look good. So let's see here, randomized ID, yeah, sort of looks better. So now if I go into the thing, you can see that they're there, but they're actually too bright. You know why? Because of the plane, and because our lights are a little too bright. So I'll make it like what, 5, and make this one also 5, because they're like super white, and you know that like white reflects more light. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically do like this. Yeah, so this is, I think this is basically it. And I'm going to set up a final frame to render. I'm going to the render settings, going to the Arnold, make AA4, diffuse 3, simple, and make a full HD 1080 frame to render. And I'm going to, this was my last render, so yeah, you can see that it's pretty much the same. And I'm just going to click on render and let it see. Okay, so it's done. It took like what, 2 minutes almost, but it's looking good. And you can do some post effects here, some basic, you know. Of course you wouldn't use it like this, you know. It is something very simple, but something fun to do. So yeah, if you guys want to give it a try, give it a try. And as always, I want to thank you guys for, you know, supporting me. I've never thought I would reach here, you know, like all these subscribers and all these views, and I'm glad that you guys are liking it. And I know this one wasn't too good, but you know, I've just posted this video. This is one of my recent works that I did, and I posted this and I asked you people about like if you wanted me to do a tutorial, and a lot of you have said it. So probably I'm gonna do a tutorial on this, so stay tuned for that. And make sure, if you haven't subscribed till now, to subscribe to my channel and like give it a thumbs up if you like the tutorial, and let me know what else you want me to do next. And make sure to go to my Instagram, FX with Sayed, and follow me there and check out my works, and it means a lot to me. So as always, and especially in these in this times that we are like quarantined in our rooms, in our houses, make sure to stay safe and be creative, and as always, enjoy working.